What do you mean it won't start?
Sir, the system just completely shut down. The backup generator isn't kicking in either.
We are stuck.
The rain was pouring down heavily on 7th Street, drumming a relentless beat against the cold pavement. Inside his multi-million-dollar, jet-black armored car, Marcello Vance, a man whose very name made the city tremble, glared at the dead dashboard. The engine was completely silent. What do you mean it won't start? Marcello's voice was dangerously low, slicing through the tense silence inside the vehicle. His lead bodyguard, a massive man sweating despite the cold rain, turned around slowly from the passenger seat. Sir, the system just completely shut down. The backup generator isn't kicking in either. We are stuck. We are sitting ducks in the worst neighborhood in the city. Marcello snapped, his eyes flashing with fury. Fix it. Now. Outside. 3 heavily armed bodyguards popped the massive hood, their flashlights darting over the complex, military-grade machinery. They were clueless. They pulled at wires and slammed their fists against the pristine fender in utter frustration. Suddenly, the creak of a rusty metal door cut through the sound of the storm. Marcello looked out the dark-tinted window. Walking out of small, dimly lit garage across the street was a young black woman. She wore a grease-stained jumpsuit, a heavy hood pulled over her head, and carried a battered metal toolbox. This was Nia. She had no idea who Marcello was, and frankly, she didn't care. As she stepped near the vehicle, 2 bodyguards instantly blocked her path, their hands moving inside their jackets toward their hidden weapons. "Get back, lady." One growled, his voice tight. "We don't need your help. Move along." Nia didn't even flinch. She looked at the giant blocking her way, then glanced at the smoking engine bay. "Suit yourself," she said, her voice completely calm. "But your alternator is fine, and your battery is full. Your electronic control module is choking. Keep cranking that ignition, and you'll fry the whole system. Then you'll need a tow truck. And trust me, no tow truck comes here after dark." The back door of the luxury car swung open. Marcello Vance stepped out into the pouring rain. A bodyguard scrambled to hold a large black umbrella over his head, but Marcello ignored him, his sharp, hawk-like eyes locked onto Nia. He had been listening to her from the back seat. "You think you can fix this, young lady?" Marcello asked. His deep voice carried absolute authority. Nia looked him dead in the eye, matching his intense gaze. "I don't think. I know. But my time costs money, Mr. Beautiful Suit. And it is raining." A small, intrigued smile touched Marcello's lips. Nobody talked to him this way. "If you can fix this car in 15 minutes, I will pay you $5,000 in cash. If you fail, you waste my time. And I do not tolerate my time being wasted." Nia lifted her toolbox slightly. "Give me 10 minutes. She pushed past the stunned bodyguards and dove straight into the engine bay. Her hands moved like a seasoned surgeon, precise, fast, and confident. In exactly 8 minutes, she found a pinched wire hidden beneath the heavy armor plating, spliced it back together, and insulated it perfectly. "Start it up," Nia commanded, stepping back and wiping a streak of grease from her cheek. The driver pushed the ignition button. Instantly, the massive engine roared to life, purring like a giant, satisfied beast. The bodyguards gasped in absolute shock. Marcello stood frozen, looking from his watch to Nia. In that exact 10-minute window, the powerful Mafia boss realized he had just met the most extraordinary woman of his life. And right then and there, he fell hard for her. Before we find out how Nia changed Marcello's dangerous world forever, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Also, drop a comment below and let us know where you are watching this video from. We love reading your responses and knowing our community. After receiving her $5,000 in cash that rainy night, Nia went back to her quiet life. Or at least she tried to. This garage, Johnson's Auto Repair, was everything to her. It had belonged to her late father, who taught her every single thing she knew about engines. He always told her that a car would tell you its problems if you just listened closely enough. But Nia had a lot of heavy burdens on her shoulders. The bills were piling up constantly. The rent for the garage had suddenly doubled, and the neighborhood was getting more dangerous by the day. As a young black woman in a male-dominated business, She faced skepticism every day. Men often walked into her shop and assumed she could not even change a tire, only for her to completely dismantle and rebuild an engine right in front of them. Still, her brilliant skills could not stop the rising debts. She desperately needed a miracle to save her father's legacy. The miracle, or perhaps a dangerous turning point, arrived just 3 days later. City inspectors showed up at her shop, claiming the old building was not up to code. They demanded $10,000 for immediate repairs or threatened to shut her down permanently. To make matters worse, a local street gang walked in an hour later, demanding protection money and threatening to burn the garage to the ground if she did not pay by the end of the week. Nia felt completely cornered. She sat at her father's old wooden desk, looking at the unpaid notices with tears in her eyes. Then her gaze fell upon a small, elegant black card with a silver phone number on it. Marcello Vance had handed it to her before his car drove away that night. He had offered her a job as his personal driver and mechanic, promising $20,000 a month. At the time, she had refused because she wanted to be her own boss and feared his dark world. But now she had no choice. She picked up the phone and dialed the number. The job began the very next morning. A sleek luxury vehicle picked Nia up and brought her to a massive, heavily guarded estate on the outskirts of the city. Marcello welcomed her warmly and showed her a spotless, giant garage filled with exotic sports cars and armored vehicles. Nia established her rules immediately. She refused to carry a weapon, and she insisted that her father's garage remain open, using her new salary to hire a trusted childhood friend to run the daily operations there. Marcello respected her fierce loyalty and agreed to all her terms without hesitation. In the weeks that followed, Nia became an essential part of Marcello's daily routine. She inspected every vehicle with extreme care, ensuring the brakes, steering, and bulletproof glass were always in perfect condition. When Marcello traveled into the city for his various business meetings, Nia was always at the wheel. Initially, the rides were completely silent. Marcello spent his time in the back seat, reading legal documents or speaking in low, serious tones on his secure phone. However, he constantly watched Nia in the rearview mirror. He admired her absolute calmness and her smooth, precise driving style. Even in the worst city traffic, she never panicked. Slowly, the dynamic between the Mafia boss and the mechanic began to shift. Marcello stopped sitting in the back seat altogether. Instead, he started riding up front in the passenger seat next to her. He wanted to talk to her. He asked genuine questions about her life, her childhood, and her dreams. Nia spoke openly about her father and the love they shared for mechanical work. Marcello listened to every single word with deep fascination. He realized that Nia was the only person in his entire life who did not want anything from him. She did not fear his power, and she did not try to flatter him for favors. She treated him like a regular human being, with complete honesty and respect. For a man who lived in a world of constant betrayal, lies, and fake smiles, Nia was a pure breath of fresh air. Marcello found himself falling deeply and hopelessly in love with her. He loved her unmatched strength, her brilliant mind, and the beautiful way her eyes sparkled whenever she talked about fixing a classic car. He began bringing her gifts to express his feelings. He knew she would reject expensive jewelry or designer dresses, so he bought her rare, high-end mechanical tools instead. When he presented her with a vintage, specialized set of wrenches she had once casually mentioned, Nia smiled warmly and thanked him by his first name for the very first time. Hearing her call him Marcello made his heart race with genuine happiness. However, Marcello's dangerous world was about to crash down upon them. A ruthless rival crime boss named Victor had been planning a hostile takeover of Marcello's territory. Victor knew he could never attack Marcello at his heavily fortified mansion, so he waited for the perfect moment to strike when Marcello was traveling through the city. The opportunity came on another heavily rainy evening. Marcello had to attend a high-stakes meeting at an isolated warehouse near the dark city docks. Before they left, Nia inspected the armored SUV with extra care. She felt an unusual, heavy weight in her chest, a strange gut feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The dark, stormy weather felt exactly like the night they had first met. When they arrived at the quiet docks, Marcello went inside the warehouse with his main associates, leaving Nia in the running vehicle while 2 bodyguards stood watch outside the entrance doors. Nia sat in the driver's seat, keeping her eyes moving constantly, scanning every dark alleyway and rooftop. Suddenly, her sharp eyes caught a flash of metal on the roof of a building across the street. Realizing it was a sniper, Nia opened her mouth to scream a warning, but a loud gunshot already echoed through the night air. 1 bodyguard dropped instantly. Within seconds, 3 dark vans sped around the corner, blocking the main exit of the street. Armed men poured out of the vans and began firing heavy weapons at the warehouse. Nia did not freeze or panic. Her heart pounded furiously, but her mind remained completely clear and focused. She slammed her foot down on the gas pedal, driving the heavy armored SUV right through the wooden doors of the warehouse to create a shield for Marcello. Inside, the room was filled with thick dust and flying bullets as Victor's men ambushed them from the rear doors. Nia spun the heavy vehicle around, blocking the incoming gunfire. She shouted for Marcello and his surviving men to get inside. They dove into the back seat just as bullets rained down upon the armored glass, creating deep cracks but failing to pierce through. With the main front exit completely blocked by the rival vans, Nia knew she had to think fast. She looked at the old brick wall at the very back of the warehouse, recognizing that the single-layer brick structure was old and weak. She threw the SUV into reverse, backed up as far as possible, and then slammed it into drive. She accelerated with every ounce of horsepower the engine possessed, telling everyone to hold on tight. The heavy vehicle crashed directly through the brick wall at 60 miles per hour, exploding out into a quiet side street behind the docks. Victor's men realized what happened and immediately gave chase in their faster vans, firing rapidly at the retreating SUV. Marcello fired back through the rear gun ports, shouting that they needed to lose the pursuers quickly. Nia maintained her focus, driving directly toward an old, narrow iron bridge that crossed the river. The wet iron surface was incredibly slick from the heavy rain. As she approached the bridge, Nia saw a large delivery truck turning onto it from the opposite direction, leaving only a tiny, narrow gap. Instead of slowing down, Nia timed her movement perfectly, sliding the heavy SUV through the tight space with millimeter precision. The side mirror scraped against the iron railing with a loud screech, but they made it through safely. The driver of the lead chase then tried to follow her layout, but panicked on the slippery surface. He slammed on his brakes, causing the van to spin completely out of control and crash heavily into the delivery truck, entirely blocking the bridge. The remaining enemy vans were trapped behind the wreckage, unable to continue the pursuit. Nia drove smoothly into the dark, quiet streets of a safe zone, successfully escaping the danger. When they finally returned to the safety of the mansion's massive garage, the bodyguards quickly left to secure the property, leaving Marcello and Nia completely alone inside the vehicle. Nia turned off the roaring engine, and a heavy silence filled the space. As the intense adrenaline began to fade, her hands started to shake slightly against the steering wheel. Marcello reached over gently, taking her trembling hands into his large, warm grip. He looked at her with tears of gratitude and pure devotion in his eyes. He told her that she was the most incredible woman he had ever met, thanking her for risking her life to save him. Nia replied softly that it was simply her job, but Marcello shook his head. He lifted her chin gently, looking deeply into her eyes, and confessed that he didn't care about the cars or the driving anymore. He confessed his deep love for her, explaining that she had stolen his heart from the very first moment he saw her in the rain, covered in grease, and treating him like a regular human being. Nia looked at him, seeing absolute truth and vulnerability in the eyes of a man everyone else feared. She realized that over the last few months, she had fallen completely in love with him too, seeing his hidden kindness, his profound respect for her, and his protective nature. She expressed her worry about his dangerous lifestyle, but Marcello made a solemn promise right then and there. He vowed to protect her and explained that he was already transferring all his businesses into entirely legal operations, leaving the criminal underworld behind forever to build a real, peaceful life with her. Nia smiled through her tears, accepting his love. 1 year later, the entire city witnessed a massive change. Marcello Vance had completely walked away from his past life, transferring his immense wealth into legitimate businesses and becoming a well-known philanthropist who built schools and community centers in poor neighborhoods. On 7th Street, the old, flickering neon sign of Nia's garage was completely gone. In its place stood a beautiful, modern, state-of-the-art facility. The bright new sign proudly read, Johnson and Vance Automotive Corporation, marking it as the largest and most advanced repair center in the state. Inside the clean, bustling workshop, Nia stood beneath a beautiful vintage sports car, carefully adjusting the exhaust system. She wore her familiar blue jumpsuit, with a tiny speck of dark grease on her nose. The workshop door opened, and Marcello walked inside. He was no longer wearing his dark, intimidating suits, opting instead for a simple shirt and casual jeans. He looked completely happy, relaxed, and at peace. He walked up behind Nia, wrapping his arms tenderly around her waist and kissing her cheek. He softly reminded her that the grand opening ceremony was about to begin outside, with the mayor and dozens of reporters waiting eagerly to see the brilliant woman behind the new empire. Nia turned around in his loving arms, wiping her hands on an old rag with a beautiful smile. She told him to let them wait a few more minutes, as a proper machine always required its final checks to run perfectly. Marcello laughed happily, holding her close to his chest. He had finally found everything he ever wanted in life: true peace, a clean future, and the deep love of the brilliant woman who had fixed his car in 10 minutes and changed his entire world forever.